Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode here on Prayer House Online. Whether you're here every week or this is your first time, I'd like to say a welcome. My name is Fortunatus, and I'm part of the team here in Prayer House in Weymouth. And this week we have Phil Reed, who is part of the leadership team at the Lighthouse Church in Holton Heath, speaking to us here. Phil has been a friend of the Prayer House for a long time. He, alongside his wife Heather, have been leading the church there for nearly 30 odd years. And Phil today is sharing his testimony, his story of how God can pick someone just living their life, and how he can pick someone and turn their life around to have an impact in this world. So I hope this encourages you. I hope this blesses you. Do listen to it and let us know what you think.
Thank you very much for a warm welcome. Yeah, this is the second time I've been to the prayer house, but I have to say I don't recognize many faces because the last time was quite a long time ago, wasn't it? When was it? It was before the fire. There's a lot of fires, aren't there? But yeah, we have had a team's been over, haven't they? My daughter came over and did something one weekend a few years just before the pandemic. So anyway, I've got some notes here, but I feel to abandon them completely and really just tell you a bit of my story. I feel that is right today. A little bit of testimony about how I came to be here. So as Paul says, I'm Phil Reed. I'm married to Heather, and we went to the same infant school together. We've known each other a very long time. We've been married for 43 years. We have three grown-up children. So one's 40, one's 39, and one's 34. And they have two children each. So we have 6 grandkids now. And it is the most delightful stage of life. Grandkids are a blessing from the Lord. I have been a Christian for 50 years this year. So that's a while. I became a Christian when I was 15 in a Church of England church in a small village just west of Cambridge, where we grew up. Heather and I grew up together, and we both became Christians in the same church. And we're in the same youth fellowship together and went to the same school together and so on. So we've got a lot of history. What I feel to share at the moment is actually how God has his hand on you even when you don't think he has, right? Because even though I became a Christian at the age of 15, I will say I was not a very good Christian. I still don't think I'm a very good Christian, actually. It's I come from a background, not like Paul, who comes from a line of about 1,000 generations of Christians and a heritage and all. No, my parents were completely unbelieving, and Heather's parents were completely unbelieving and told her, you were a complete fool for believing any of this. They come from quite a scientific background, and he did give his life to the Lord on his deathbed, though, that scientist, so anything can change. But yeah, I didn't feel like I was a very good Christian. I was a bit half-hearted. I was a bit distracted. I didn't like church. It was a bit of a problem, wasn't it, really? The whole thing of going to church, and I observed from it, being early on in the Church of England, that you could go to church for a couple of hours and meet with neither God nor people. It was sort of like, you think, what just happened to me? And there was always a hunger in there for more. And basically, I never really found it at that stage. And we went off to university. We actually went to different universities. Heather went to Loughborough, and I went up to Hull, and I studied electronic engineering. And I lost my way a bit. I did. I put my hand up. I did not go to church in that time, and I spent more time at the Union Bar than I did anywhere else. And I listened to a lot of bands, and I'm suffering for it now. I have hearing aids, that too many heads inside speaker cabinets and all of that stuff in that era. But I kind of really lost my way. And Heather didn't. She kind of went the other way and became the lady vice president of the CU and was running things and doing wonderful things for God and pushing on and all of that stuff. And during that time, we hit a crisis moment. And it was in the days there was no mobile phones. I don't think there was even email. I don't think we had email in those days. I think the first computer that I ever came across filled an entire room like this and ran on something called Algol 68, which was a very early programming language. And you submitted cards to it one day and came back a week later to find out what the result was. And those were the days that I was at university and studying electronic engineering. But anyway, I receive a letter from my dearly beloved, and she says, "Dear Phil, I'm terribly sorry, but I don't think this is going to work." Because I was going one way, she was going another way. We were at different universities. She had a completely different set of friends. She was on fire for God, doing stuff. And I was wasting time down at the Union Bar. And my response, so you receive the letter and you kind of make the arrangement to phone up. You send a letter back and say, let's stand by the call box at 6:30. And hopefully no one else is there and you can answer the phone. That's how we communicated. And but she said, no, don't bother with that. We're done. And so at that stage, something on the inside of me really kind of thought, no. Hello, incoming. That could be my wife. She's tuning in somehow. Don't tell that story, she's saying. No. But anyway, don't bother coming down. We're really done. I feel it's the right thing. But anyway, my response was, I got on a train. In the post train, which took about 8 hours to go from Hull to Loughborough, and I literally turned up at a door and said, look, this is not right. And to cut a long story short, we kind of like semi got back together, and then a few weeks later, no, this really isn't going to work. And I think I had 3 visits there, and she was really convinced this was not going to work. And so on the last time I went down there, and we went for this very long walk, and we walked out into the countryside around Loughborough, and it wasn't far outside the city, and we walked and walked and walked, and there was lots of tears. Just to say, her parents had emigrated to the States at the time, to Georgia. And so my Mum and Dad, bless them, had offered Heather a room in my house, so it was complicated. We would be splitting up, but still kind of living in the same base sort of thing. But anyway, we were trying to sort all that, and we go for this walking, lots of tears, lots of broken heart, and we're walking, and we get to a point, and it is pitch black, and we suddenly look at each other and think, something's changed. This is going to be all right. We're going to work it out. And anyway, so we turn around and we start walking back towards Loughborough. And it was literally, we'd been walking for about an hour and a half. It was a long way. And so we walked back, and all the way back, rather than talking about how we were going to split up and break up, we were talking about, okay, how can we make this work? How can we've got a future together. It was very odd. Because even after the time, I look back and think, why did I think like that? She treated me really badly. It was like I felt quite indignant about it after the event, but something on the inside said we needed to be together. Anyway, we walked back, and we're talking about the future and how we build and what we were going to do and all of this sort of stuff. And we get back to Loughborough, and I can remember it to this day. It was a fun fair in the town. And we walked in, that smell of candy floss and that noise of Wurlitzers and all of that sort of thing. And this guy walks up to us, and Heather said to him, "Oh, hello, Steve." And he had a big thing of candy floss, which he was tucking into. And Heather said to him, I thought you were fasting. And apparently he'd said to her he was fasting for 3 days. And there he was tucking into this thing of candy floss. And he said, I was fasting for you two. And an hour and a half ago, the Lord told me that it was done. Now, I was nowhere with God. Honestly. I mean, even straight afterwards, I was really nowhere with God. I still found it hard to go to church. And we carried on. And, like God's hand was clearly on us from a very early stage. And he had a destiny for us. I'm saying this as a word of encouragement because, I mean, everyone in here probably at some stage excludes themselves from the purposes of God or any kind of destiny in God because you think you've mucked up or you're not qualified or you're not gifted enough. You're not kind of like Paul the pastor and all of this stuff. We can't do that stuff. But what I'm saying to you, honestly, I was rubbish. I was rubbish at stuff. I was not really in tune with things of God at all. And yet God had a purpose for me. He had a purpose. And therefore, he kind of was steering me even in those days when I was making wrong choices. And he brought me through to that point. Anyway, we carried on. We left university. We got married. And we started off our lives in Brighton. And even then, you know, our lives were not much. We still didn't like going to church. It took us a long time to like going to church. And but we began on a journey, and we met these missionaries who came from America to England, and they were living just down the road. Campus Crusade for Christ they were part of, and they were a great bunch, sports guys, and they befriended us and started asking us lots of questions and all of that, and started to put just a discontentment for life, you know, and really wanting the more in God and really wanting to see something happen. And they got us to just pray some dangerous prayers like, you know, if you're dissatisfied with the way things are, then pray for change. And they sat down with us and prayed for change. And I think within a couple of months, I ended up losing my job. And I had to find another job. And anyway, we ended up coming down to Poole. That was kind of the knock-on of it. And we ended up moving down here. And we kind of went to various sort of different churches at the time and ended up at this Baptist chapel in Corfmullen. And, you know, we got involved, but again, no real designs on doing anything meaningful for God. We were just helping everyone else, helping with a youth group, helping with a home group, giving some money, doing all of this stuff, looking after babies and stuff like that. I was, at that stage, a software engineer working for Siemens. Heather was a teacher working in the local primary school. And we had 3 lovely kids. Anyway, one day in that, in the middle of all of that, we were going to this house group meeting, leaders meeting, where we were going to talk to some other people about what was going on in our house group. And we kind of went to the meeting, went through it and came out. And as I got into the car, Heather turned to me and said, you know, I think God has said something strange to me today. And I said, be quiet. I know what it is already. I know it's a very dangerous thing to say to your wife, I will say. But I said, there will be a new church at Litchett Travers. And her mouth dropped open. She had had this same sentence dropped into her subconscious mind, if you like. And I had had it in the same way. Now, we had no interest in Litchett Travers whatsoever. I think I'd looked at a house once there when we were moving down from Brighton, decided it was all too expensive, and we kind of forgot it, and we were living in Corfmullen and stuff. So we'd never really been there, we'd never really done anything, we had no interest. why did this get dropped into our subconscious minds in the same few days completely? We'd not been talking about it. It was random. It was completely random, but it got dropped in. And I tell you what, that moment began a journey which has been going on now for 35 years, probably. That was probably 35 years ago that happened. When we first heard this, we kind of looked at each other and thought, that is weird. That is really weird that we've got this same word in the same week. We were not given to getting words. We weren't those sort of people. We didn't get pictures. We didn't really do prophecy in the Baptist church and things like that. There wasn't much of that stuff going on at that time. And but we thought, this is God. God somehow or other has spoken to us. What do we do with it now? And now he didn't say, Phil and Heather, you go and do a new church in Litcham Travers. He said, there will be a new church in Litcham Travers. And so we thought, well, there's going to be a new church in Litcham Travers. We can go and join along. We can give it some money. We can look after the kids. We can play some music. We can do whatever. Never even crossed our minds that we might be involved in it in some instrumental way. We took it to the leaders of the church. That's kind of what you do in those sort of situations, and said, what do you reckon to this? We've both had this word. And collectively, the whole lot of them said, no, that's not of God. It's been tried once, it won't work, and I should forget it. And we thought, ooh, now, we that's awkward. But anyway, we kind of sat on it and were obedient and carried on. Shortly afterwards, unfortunately, that church kind of blew up one way or another, and we ended up going on this journey around different places. One of them was Shaftesbury, Father's house, over in Tuckton, Christian Fellowship. We were there for a while, and another one was Word of Life. And we went on this little journey, and this word inside of us was just working and working and working and making us more and more discontented. And what is it about? What is this? You know, we couldn't run away from it. I think we got to the stage where we were getting more and more drawn towards Litcham Travers, and we put our kids in school in Litcham Travers. We began praying for Litcham Travers. We began walking around it and tossing salt and oil and all sorts of things, weird things that we do. We just did not understand it at all. And anyway, we sort of carried on for a while. And I think by this time we were in Father's house, Shaftesbury, and just really it's kind of 30 miles away, isn't it? It's difficult to kind of be there, really there. But we visited there on a Sunday, and it was a great blessing. And the good stuff was going on. We're probably in about 95 now. So it was all rocking and rolling there. We loved it. Anyway, I was there one night in one of these refreshing meetings. Keep an eye on the time. And this lady came to pray for me and said, Phil, I can see this picture of bridges going out east from you. And I thought, east? East? That's Corfmullen. That's not... Litcham Travers is west. That can't be right. And she said, no, somewhere like Malaysia or Singapore, which is a word that I rebuked immediately. I had no intention of going over there. Anyway, I kind of pondered these words in my heart, and I went home. And as I got home, my friend and a guy who'd been praying with us a little bit, who we've known for a long time, Andy Game, was there. And he was waving this leaflet. Phil, we could go on this School of the Prophets. And it's in Malaysia. And we could stay with my friends in Singapore, and they would take us down there. And I thought, oh no, this is a stitch-up job, isn't it? And I thought, but at that stage, we were so discontented and so, we've got to know what this means. We've really got to kind of understand what God is saying through this, or we've just got to get on with life, get a proper job and do something else and forget it all. So anyway, we booked in on this thing, 2 weeks in Malaysia in a place called Muar, which I have often described as the armpit of the galaxy. It is, oh my days, it was hot. It was 40 degrees Celsius day and night, no aircon, nothing. And it was challenging. It was challenging to all of my senses. And we booked in on it, we got into it, and we set off over to do this 2 weeks. I didn't really know why I was going, only that the guy that was running it had a clear prophetic ministry. He heard from God. He'd prophesied over the guys that started God TV and called them out. Christian Channel Europe it was at the time, Rory and Wendy Alloc, and said, God's going to use you to kind of reach a load of people. Now, I know that kind of went bad in the end, but it left a legacy that is still going today. And so we thought, he hears God, let's go over and really kind of understand how to do this. And we got in this place, and the first night, it was boiling hot. I had been put in a room with 6 other guys, no windows, landlocked room, triple bunks on each side, and a lot of snoring, and oh my goodness. And I think I got on the phone that night to Heather using my card and said, Heather, you've got to get in contact with the travel agent. I think I've got to come home tomorrow. I'm not going to stand this. And over the phone, it kind of went quiet a little bit at the other end. And then she said, don't you dare come home until you got what you went for. And I thought, oh, okay. And I thought about it and thought, yes, okay, I'm uncomfortable, but I feel like God's led us to this point. And I took a decision at that moment to just choose to die to what was important to me, my comfort, my tastes, my just all my preferences, because I felt like they were getting in the way, Do you go into some places and the music was just awful and it was loud and I could feel myself migrating towards the back of the room, and getting away from the action. And but I made this decision. Okay, I'm gonna die to this, and I am going to embrace fully. The Lord's brought me over here, so there must be something for me. And so rather than kind of sitting at the back and waiting, I'm going to go forward. If he says stand up, I'll stand up. If he says put your hands up, I'll put my hands up. I kind of said, I'm the student, you're the teacher. I'm going to receive from you whatever it is. Anyway, the 2 weeks went on and kind of not much happened. And I think it was the penultimate night. We were in one of these worship times that went on for 3 or 4 hours. And I got in there and I thought, oh my goodness, Lord, I just need to know, I need to go back with something. And as I was worshiping, as I was just standing, I could feel the presence of God just come in. Now, what began to happen was my cheeks began to tingle a little bit, my lips went a little bit numb, my ears started. I thought I'd trapped a nerve, so I got up and moved around, but it just kept getting a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Something's going on here. And so one of the things that this guy, Jonathan David, had said was, if you start experiencing the presence of God, don't say, oh, I'm feeling the presence of God. Worship. He's inviting you to worship. He's inviting you to press. He's wooing you. He's asking you to come in closer. So I just began to say, Jesus, I love you. Jesus, I love you. I can remember repeating it. I can still see it as clear as anything now. And the more I said it, the stronger this feeling got. And this tingling started turning into like a power that was pulsating through me from in every fiber of my body. And very soon it became more comfortable to lie down than to stand up. So I just kind of lay on the floor. And it was like this electricity was going through me from the very top to the very bottom. And I kind of lay there for a while, and I became unaware of what was happening in the meeting. And there was a moment where I thought, this is what it means to be seated in the heavenly places with Christ Jesus. It was kind of like I was there with him. Now, I didn't see a great picture of him in his glory or a lamb on the throne or anything. I just knew I was there with him. And I think what had happened was I'm very analytical as well. I'm an engineer by training. And whenever anything happens, I'm thinking, what's happening? What's happening? And I try and work it out. And I think what he'd done is he'd released some power into my body and disabled my physical body so that I couldn't get in the way. And in that moment, I think my spirit was fully alive, and I knew that I was with him, and he was right there, and he had it was cool. I tell you, even now, this is quite a few years on, it moves me on the inside when I think of it. When you have an encounter with the Lord like this, it ruins you forever. Honestly, it is like you just think you'd do anything to get back into that place and to live in that place and to dwell in that place. It becomes the most important thing ever, is to just be with Jesus, to hear his voice, to feel his presence around you, and to understand the reality of who he is. Nearly all of my early life as a Christian was all about a theology. It was all about a set of beliefs. It was all about a set of routines, but very little actual experience. And so here am I, just experiencing the presence of God. And it was incredible. And anyway, I'm running out of time. So we after about an hour and a half, I came to, and everyone had gone from the room. And I was just left thinking, oh my goodness, what has happened there? And the next day when we got up, it was the very last day of this school, Jonathan David got up and said, I hear one of the Englishmen has had an encounter. Would you care to come and give testimony? And I got up and began to say a little bit about what happened. And of course, as I started speaking about it, it all started happening again. And it was amazing. But at the end of this, he kind of got up and said, at the beginning of this 2 weeks, I said, over this 2 weeks, I'm not going to prophesy over anyone because you're here to learn how to hear God's voice yourself. And I was really disappointed. But he said, I know I said that, but the spirit of prophecy has come on me and I have to discharge it. And so he sat me down in a room and we set a tape going, and he then began to prophesy. And basically, he opened up all my mail. He said where I'd lived. He said what my family was like, my kids, the extension that I'd built on the back of the house, where we'd prayed, where we'd worshipped, what we'd done. And then he said, basically, Phil, you've been waiting for someone else to come along and start this thing. And the Lord is saying to you, this is your ordination day. God is setting you apart for the work of ministry. He's setting you apart for the work of ministry. And he prophesied over about 20 minutes and said a load of things of what had happened and what will be happening in the future, some of which have happened, some of which are yet to happen. What I'm saying that is really, I was just an ordinary geezer. I was minding my own business. I like going to bands and drinking beer, and, I don't know what it was that made God paint a target on my back like that. But he had a purpose for me. We started that church, as Paul said, about 30 years ago. We came back from that visit in Malaysia, and suddenly I was kind of saying, well, we're no longer waiting for a church, we are church. And we kind of declared it, and we decreed it, and we started. And that was in 1996. But what I'm saying is that all it takes is a little bit of hunger. It takes a little bit of faith to say, I believe in God, I believe he's real, and I believe he's got a purpose and a destiny for my life. And I want to be a part of it. The thing that I really feel to say at this time is personally, we've been through a challenging time in the last 5 years. I think everyone would agree. But I believe at this moment, we are at the threshold of an unprecedented harvest of souls globally. And that's why it's really exciting that Paul's going over to Ukraine and doing some of these things. I think you're going to see a lot of people turn to Christ. We are on the threshold, and I believe it is here now. We're seeing the mercy drops, aren't we? We had a young 19-year-old who just turned up on our door and he said, I've had a dream and God spoke to me. I've got to come to church and find a spiritual home. What have I got to do? Can I get baptized? And, just randomly, no one told him anything or anything. And I've heard that story all over the country, all over, even very traditional churches that are just not really rocking and rolling in the Holy Spirit and all of that stuff. It's happening. God is on the move, and it is beginning, and we are at it. And every one of you has a purpose in that. And it doesn't matter where it is, what country it's in, because I believe it is going to happen globally almost simultaneously. We are in a season of harvest. And number one, I don't want you to discount yourself because of any wrong choices, because that wonderful blood of Jesus, which we were decreeing there, just washes us completely clean. It justifies us. It's just as if it never happened. And it really is. Any wrong choices you've made get expunged, wiped away completely and utterly, and you stand afresh, ready to say, come on, Jesus, let's go. So nothing can disqualify you, even if you've not got the training and the gifting and the wonderful music talents of Forchi and all of this sort of stuff. God can use you. God has a purpose for you. All you've got to do is believe it and say, yes, please, Jesus, come.
What a great story. What a great testimony. In a nutshell, this is my encouragement to you. Say yes to Jesus. Trust him, follow him, and go ahead. Take that risk and see what happens. Like Phil, who knows what God can do through you if you would simply say yes and trust him with the next step. Go ahead and do that even this week. Why not think about someone you can talk to, someone you can encourage, someone you can help this week. I hope it goes well for you. Keep us posted. Till next week then, take care. Bye-bye.